You know, I looked at some of the comments you got after you appeared on the show, and one guy, one fathead on Twitter, you know, one of these keyboard warriors, basically accused you of just seeking fame.
Yes.
And you replied to him that when Xeon was here and you guys would go touring all over the UK and Europe, I think you were playing bass in the band. Yeah. So you knew what it's like to have that thrill when a live audience roars the ceiling off because they're just so delighted to see you. And that's a much bigger thrill than just going on Twitter and talking about COVID vaccines. But was that guy typical of the kind of pushback you got from people?
I have seen a few comments saying that I'm clearly doing it to sell albums, or I'm going to reform the band, and how? And you know, we haven't played since 2013 anyway, so why would I all of a sudden want to reform the band after my partner of 21 years and the singer of the band has died?
That's a very reasonable point that you shouldn't even have to make. There is a lot of heartlessness out there, Charlotte, but at the same time, there are people who are in the same situation as you and Vikki, or they are themselves injured by these vaccines and want to get to the bottom of it.
Yes, unfortunately, there are quite a few out there, and we know a fair few.
We do.
And lots of people do still reach out to us, and you know, we help where we can. I think that's the main reason why we've started the campaign.
Yeah, VIP UK.
We've got somewhere to direct them finally.
Well, we now have a situation where the Baroness, who's heading this inquiry, has asked the Prime Minister if she can extend the terms of her inquiry to cover those either damaged or killed by the vaccines. Do you think that's a good development, or just another way to push it all under the rug until everyone's forgotten about it?
No, I think we've thought that was positive.
We did, all of us, email and request for the vaccines to be included in the terms of reference. I mean, our biggest concern now is that Boris might reject them from the inquiry. So thank you, Mark and GBNews, for bringing this up, because I think the more people who know that that is potentially in the inquiry, the less chance there is of it being thrown out.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, and I don't want to make this a thing where we just talk about the media, but what is interesting to me is that clearly these vaccines, just to put it at its mildest, these vaccines were oversold. They were supposed to be 95% effective. They're not. So in other words, they've been telling people you have to take these things when they really didn't. And the sad fact of the matter is that they should have instead been more honest about the pros and cons. Don't you feel? I mean, it's particularly sad for you, Charlotte, because your husband worked in the medical profession, where there was perhaps the most active suppression of alternative voices when it came to these vaccines.
Yes, and of course, due to his role, he was one of the first people to be offered it, and there was very little information. I mean, you say pros and cons, but at the time there was no con mentioned.
So that in fact he lacked the information to give informed consent, as it were. I mean, that's what's so difficult about this situation.